So first up is the illustrious Stephen Ringland. He's going to be talking about Lodash, etc. Stephen is a full stack engineer at HighRoads. So Stephen, we're going to pass it over to you. You want to share your screen?
Yep, sounds good.
Briefly as well, sorry. With regards to questions, we're going to have time for questions at the end, but please feel free to post them in the channel just as we're going, okay?
So I'll stop sharing.
Okay, all good. Yeah, hi everyone. Great to be back. I was just saying, I think the last time I talked was here August 2019 before everything went down, and obviously with new organizers, so that's great. But yeah, I've seen working with Claire how hard it can be to organize. So thanks to those in the past, and good luck to both the organizers. So today I'm going to talk about utility libraries. I named it Lodash, etc. because I mean, if you think of utility library in JavaScript, you think of Lodash probably. I mean, I just looked it up there on NPM and had 40 million downloads this week. So it's clearly quite popular, probably the most popular project on any language, to be honest, really. So what are utility libraries? So I just wrote this, what my sort of view of utility libraries are. They're sort of set of functions generally that, you know, provide additional functionality to the language. So the main ones are, as I said, Lodash, and then the other main one is Ramda, which I'll get into. Lodash is, as probably know, is a fork of underscore. So underscores kind of went a little by the wayside. So if you're looking to know, it's still usable. And then there's Lodash FP as well, which my personal opinion is if you're going to use like a functional style one, I think Ramda is probably much better than Lodash FP. But that's my personal style. But if you do have Lodash in, you can use the FP part of it. And then, you know, things change as they would with the likes of Ramda. So what do you get really with utility libraries? So I've wrote this, you know, quite contrived example, really where I have an array inside it, which I flatten. So I first of all check if it's empty, if it isn't empty, if it's an array, and if it's then I unique it. As you see, there's two properties with the same value here. And then map over it just to get the name. That's all I want. Pretend there's more than just the name properties in this, but and then obviously flatten it down. So this is with Lodash. So this is an example of what you can get with Lodash. Very useful is empty. You can probably get away with something else, but I mean, personally, I use this, you know, on a weekly basis. I would say array is actually in the language, so it's kind of a bit weird now, but unique is also a very useful one. And then obviously flatten if you have some sort of interesting data that you're using with, then, you know, flatten is very good. So a more extreme edition, I guess, of this is Ramda. This is a library that I don't use as much anymore, but I still really a fondness for, I guess. So this is you have all the same sort of things here effectively, but you have this compose function which allows you to compose them. So this may look like a lot more code than it is, but these in themselves could be separated out into their own functions or their own like exports, really. So you could export this and just use it elsewhere. You know, if this was a utility library, utility file, let's say, and then you have this compose. So you're doing all the same thing. You're checking if it's empty, if it's an array. You flatten it and then you iterate over it, which we're just getting the name here. Using this, you could obviously use the same as the last one where you just use the map. This is just the Ramda way of using it, where you have the prop and then you pass in the actual name of it here as the first argument, and then we unique it again. So exact same result. I have both of these here, which I can show later on the Ramda REPL, which is highly recommended. So some other ones as well that are quite useful. I had flatten here before I actually used it, and unique. So I updated my example, but didn't update this. Apologies. So difference, quite a useful one. The difference between two arrays. I have used that in the past. There's you know other sort of similar ones like intersection, etc. on Ramda that are very, very useful. You've got flat map and Lodash, another quite useful one. And then, you know, debounce and Lodash. You don't have you know, there's lots of debounce libraries out there, but it's quite nice that Lodash gives you a pretty nice usable one if you want to use debounce. And then the other one is currying. If you want to know what currying is, then don't ask me. I'm only joking. You can you can ask. It's quite a. It's a don't Google it because you'll probably get loads of strange examples and very maths sort of examples. But yeah, it can be quite a useful one. I have used it in the past. It's quite probably in very extreme cases, but edge cases sort of. But it is definitely useful. So are all these, and then there's there's tons more. Lodash, for example, has hundreds of ones. Randas probably I don't know, somewhere in the reason 150 functions that you can use for various data types as well. So one of the main things to talk about is when and when not to use utility library. So this is not a case for utility libraries. I have projects in the past, for example, component libraries. I like to create, whenever I create a component library, I've created one with a table, which probably is less than 2K. You can pull it in. I created a design library which has everything in it: cards, buttons, checkboxes, etc. And it's 7 kilobytes, which is probably the average one is probably about 150 to 200 kilobytes that you would use, like material UI, etc. So in those cases, you're not probably going to want to pull in Lodash. There's obviously ways to use Lodash to get tree shaking, so you don't get as much bytes in, but you probably minimize the amount of things you use, and you can use the you can recreate functions if you need them, but it's probably best that you don't. But if you're on a project, a bigger project, especially if you're in sort of client facing work, then these are great. They're highly tested, and they're they give you everything you need. If you need to develop at speed, obviously you're not sitting writing, you're not sitting writing a function to split the difference of an object or an array, or something that can be quite time consuming. Even a debounce function, which I've written in the past, takes more time than you probably would think even. So, consider, the type of project, consider the performance, as I said, and then consider your programming style. As we went through, Lambda is very functional. So if you're using sort of an imperative kind of approach, or you're, using a library or framework that has that, then, it's probably best if you stick to something so that is in that style. Lodash, for example. So, you can use Lambda and use your utility functions, but you're probably not using the full array of it really. So yeah, pros, as I said, lots more functionality. It's highly tested as well. So, these are used by almost everyone, some of these libraries. So, they're tested. If they don't have, they have a lot of unit tests around them, obviously, but they're also tested by just people using them, really. So if something breaks, people know about it pretty quick, and you can obviously revert versions, etc. So it's good that then the cons, as I went over. Bundle size, if it starts to creep up, it can be a bit of a issue. The other one is tight coupling. If you get into, especially if something's deprecated, like Lambda, for example, have deprecated quite a few functions in the past. And I have been using some of them, and they be deprecated, and obviously you can still use them, but it's kind of a time to jump off. And if you're really tightly coupled to something and it disappears, let's say like underscore sort of almost disappeared, wasn't as highly used as before, then you have to quickly switch over. So that can be an issue, not a massive issue currently, but it definitely can be for sure. So yeah, as I was saying about performance, one thing to note here, this is import cost here, which I think uses Webpack under the hood, but it's not gospel, so don't take it for gospel, but just the different import styles. Obviously the named import is easy, it's handy, you can have all the functions you need in here really, but 70k, gzipped is just under 25, but if you get the default import of it, which is probably quite annoying, quite time consuming, you can save a lot. That's a significant saving, really is. 10 times almost more of this, so that's something to take aware of. Yeah, that's me. I'll just maybe just quickly show this, the REPL, around the REPL. I wrote everything in here, so doing something else, it's super handy. You can use it just for normal JavaScript, so a really great resource. Even if you don't use Lambda, I still use this all the day, and I mostly use Lodash at the moment. So yeah, that's me. The other thing to say is HighRoads is hiring, as I'm sure a lot of people will say. So if you're interested in any roles, mostly full stack UI roles or full stack roles, and get in contact. And back to you, Chris.
Thank you very much, Stephen. So we had a couple of questions come in there. One of them was around like, so as a developer, is there much of a roadmap to try and get into Lodash style libraries or functional programming? Or if you're thinking more in a kind of just normal raw JavaScript, is there like a challenge to learn these libraries and learn the principles around them?
Yeah, I mean, probably really. I mean, I would say a lot of the libraries are quite they're quite similar to what you expect. They're almost like additions to the language in a way. So some of them are not too challenging really. You're really using, you're really just using extra functions and you can learn the functionality. But there definitely are. Like Ramda, for example, is definitely a bit of a jump. There's some. Whenever I started using Ramda, there wasn't really any resources on the internet, but there is some now. But some things like the composing stuff, I showed currying as well. Calling a function that doesn't execute immediately until you give all the parameters that it wants. That's quite a unusual thing. It's more of it's almost like a different language. Like obviously that's used in like Haskell and so on. So there is that, but for entry into these libraries, it's probably not. It's not really that difficult. If you're learning the language, if you know JavaScript to a degree. But yeah, there's definitely sort of advanced features.
And then the last one we had came in. You mentioned like the flatten methods in Lodash, and this is coming into the language itself. Is that something you'd like to see more of, these like utility libraries influencing the core language, so it's built in, so you don't have to like import an npm package?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's what we saw with Bevo over the years, right? They were able to give on TypeScript as well. They're able to give like a sort of an intro into things that are in the libraries, or that are in the sort of works of being added to the ECMAScript. They're in talks of that. So yeah, I think it's great. I think that's one of the reasons. I think that's one of the great things about the JavaScript ecosystem is you can download a library that'll give you functionality that may be coming to the language later, so you can hopefully take that out. So yeah, definitely, I think it's great.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Stevie. Well done. You
Thanks,
get a virtual clap from everyone at home.